See, I like that lead in very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen King, and you're here on The Experience. We've got some amazing interviews. The first up is my friend and yours, Ram V, who has brought us so many good books.
Hello, hello.
Amongst them in my world is These Savage Shores, because my staff still is crazy about it, even though
Still.
Thank you for joining us all the way from the other side of the earth.
My
How
pleasure.
are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. London seems to be lifting its lockdown, so I've had the opportunity to go out and grab a couple of drinks or some coffees. So it doesn't feel like I'm just spending my whole life in front of a computer screen anymore, which is good.
How have you been able to handle not getting to go out and have good food and stuff? Because I know that was something that you like to do.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, at first it was okay. I just kind of buried myself in work, but you can only do that for so long before your brain's like, I need a change. And so, yeah, no, I've not been dealing with it very well. I've tried to, go out, make a routine, go to a park and grab a coffee outside somewhere, But no, I'm happy things are opening back up here.
It looks like you are also adopting the same haircut policy I am, which is to not just let it go.
Yeah, I've been doing this in preparation for the lockdown 2 years before it started. So, I haven't had a cut in a while. Probably needs a little bit of trimming. Probably needs a little bit of maintenance, but nothing too drastic.
Oh yeah, it's glorious. I think that people would all be more at your hair, honestly.
Yeah, it's like my second most popular question, right after what books do you write? How do you maintain your hair?
Oh, that's wonderful. All right, so since last we talked, you've added a great many books to the staple of your work, including a bunch of work in DC, which I'm so glad to see them keep adding to what they're offering for you to
title. I mean, I suppose it came at the right time where I was just sort of planting my feet on firm ground right around that sort of 5G and future state era. And so I had a lot of the future state titles available to me. And I was already working on Catwoman and JLD by then. And I had talked about doing Swamp Thing for the 5G, which then went to future state. And then once people really enjoyed the future state books, it made sense that the series would happen. Hopefully I keep that going and we get a season 2. We'll see.
Was it always planned to have Justice League Dark as the second story in the Justice League book as to grab people?
Well, we weren't quite sure what was going to happen to the books right around that time because, the staff numbers were being cut short. Obviously, it wasn't going to be possible to keep the same number of books going. But I have to thank my editors, Alex Carr and Andrea Shea at the time, now joined by Brittany, and they were both champions of Justice League Dark. And so, for the changes that needed to happen, that book needed to adapt. So it's going to be 10-page stories in the back of the JL book. But, when it was offered to me, I said, yeah, bring it on. I'll do the 10 pagers on the one condition that you let me go as crazy as I want. And they said yes. So hence you have Etrigan sitting in Superman's chair. So
it's been brilliant what you've been doing with those characters. I know that a great many people are super excited about the next installment of Swamp Thing. Isn't Swamp Thing tomorrow? Wednesday?
No, Swamp Thing came out last week. Issue 2 came out last week. Yeah. Issue 2 came out last week, and then issue 3 will be next month. And it's one of those books. I think Mike and I are working on issue 6 or 7 right now. It's one of those books that goes from like horror to fantasy to straight up action to sci-fi, kind of like the old Alan Moore run. Like you couldn't predict where it was gonna go next. and I know we wanted to do that. So that's something I've been really enjoying.
So that's slated to be a limited series. Is that true?
No, it's stated to be 10 issues of season 1.
Oh, thank God.
And so, well, we don't know yet. So that means it could still end up as a limited series if the sales aren't great. But from what I'm hearing, the sales are doing really well. So people should continue what they've been doing and talk about the book and buy the copies and go visit your local comic store and pick them up.
Kind of what I've seen from the response of all of our customers is that they're always sad that the Swamp Thing series have been short. That they're looking for a longer running series because they fall in love with the character and then the series stops. And then they don't know what to do, right?
Well, when we pitched it as multiple seasons of 10-issue installments. And the idea was that at the end of 10 issues, editorial, publishing, and creators will all get together and go, okay, is everyone happy? And if everyone is happy, we continue doing the book. And so I think that's a good format even going forward. Like, I don't want to get to a place where I'm complacent on the book either. So I think this will mean if we do get a season 2, it will be just as crisp and fresh as season 1.
Oh yeah. And another book that you've touched has been really great has been Catwoman. Where have you left her in canon? And are you going to try to jump back in there and take her back over?
I mean, I am still writing her. And I'm writing.
I thought that you had like a short series for her.
No, I did issue 9 at first, and then issue 14 and 15, and then issue 25. They asked me to take on the book.
Oh.
So yeah, I've been writing since 25. We're on issue 30 right now. I suspect we'll be going for quite some time on that one.
Because I love the way you treat her, and I love the way you treat the book in general, especially when you like grab pop culture references and throw them in there willy-nilly, which makes the reader feel so smart.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love doing that stuff. I put lyrics sometimes or vague references to lyrics in my comics, and I always get these DMs from people going like, I'm not really a huge comics reader, but did you just write this lyric into the comic? I'm like, yes, and that's more reason for you to pick it up. So
are there any other characters in the DC universe specifically you'd like to play with?
I've had a couple of story concept pitches out. So I'm less character focused, more focused on stories, and there are certainly stories I would like to tell in DCU. I've talked to editors about what I want to do. I've got some personal stuff coming up, so there's going to need to be some sort of restructuring in terms of how much work I'm doing. But I feel like it's also an opportunity to kind of go back and look at, okay, what kind of work am I doing? Is there another title that I'm super interested in? So we're having those conversations. We'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So do you have, I know that traditionally you've done some great things with Image, including Paradiso.
Yeah.
Do you have any Image
and Blue and Green?
you want to do?
Well, also Blue and Green came out, which was IGN's graphic novel of the year last year, and won me my first Writer of the Year award as well. So that was great, and there'll be some news regarding that at some point in the future. And yeah, I mean, as far as Image is concerned, I've told them that I'm always interested in keeping at least one thing that is in development at Image. Obviously, the pandemic has thrown lots of things up in the air, but my intention is to go back to them with another idea that I already talked to them about somewhere around mid to end of this year. We'll see.
So what inspired Blue and Green? It's just the most beautiful, heart-rending book. I love the storyline and the mood and tone. What inspired that? It just seems like something that I don't relate with you specifically. Like, jazz.
I listen to a lot of jazz. Yeah, I listen to a lot of jazz. I play a lot of music. I've got a Gibson Les Paul sitting next to me here. I used to be like really interested in playing blues. Like if I hadn't been a comic book writer, I probably tried to become a guitarist. And so music has always been kind of a big part of me, part of my pop culture consumption, if you will. And really, the inspiration for that came at the end of Emerald City Comic Con. I just spent the whole day inside the convention, and I was like, "Look, I need some private time." So I walked into a local diner or a bar or a restaurant, basically, and there was a jazz band playing that evening. So I was like, "Yeah, I'll sit down, listen to them." And then when they took their mid-set break, the bassist came over, bought him a drink. And we ended up chatting at the bar for like 15, 20 minutes. And we talked about how writing and jazz were very similar. And that kind of sparked this story in my head about, because I dived in both feet into writing, and I'd been a chemical engineer before then. And I had all these kind of nervous questions about, am I good enough? And I suppose I just did that with a musician and took it way beyond where I would have taken it. So
Yes, it was brilliant. I
so
look forward to it because of all the teases that were headed my way. So, right.
Yeah, I feel like you get to see all of my stuff about 4 months in advance.
It's both a blessing and a curse, right? Because I know to get super hyped about it into my orders because it's so beautiful. But then also, it's like the anticipation is killing me all the time.
Yeah, there's more stuff coming your way. I'll send you more stuff. It's worth it.
Yeah.
The anticipation is worth it.
Okay, so I just read, as I was doing a little bit of like what else is going on. Is this that there's an anthology that you're involved in, Razor Blades?
Yeah. James Tynan and Steve put that together, and they invited me and they said, "Hey, do you want to do, short story horror for this magazine that we're putting together?" And I said, I'll do a series of stories. Originally, it was going to be 4, but I think now it's trimmed down to 3 just because I'm doing too much. But I've been working on them with John Pearson, and they've become this kind of outlet for me to do the kind of horror that I like doing, which is not the kind of big monster coming at you out of the woods kind of stuff, but it's the kind of stuff that will keep you awake at night.
Yeah, it was, the article that I read about it specifically said that it started out with a bunch of other people, and then it says like until Ron V showed up and then like wrote 2 of the stories that like blew everyone's minds and were like the outstanding stories in the series, which is that's a really glowing article to have come out about.
Yeah, it's very kind. I mean, I think without the quality judgment of the stories, I leave that to the readers. But I think what I try to do is I try to make my stories different in that every time you read one, like I want you to pause and go like, whoa, this is unlike everything else. And so that is certainly an endeavor, and I'm glad that stands out.
Oh yeah. When will that appear, and how will it be available to people?
The Razor Blade stories are already out, so I think they do limited print runs, so you have to order them through James's website, and or they're digitally available. I know they're doing multiple print runs of the first and the third one in which my stories appeared. I'm supposed to be doing another story for them in one of the next issues. I gotta talk to Steve and figure out which one it is. Yeah.
So do they give you like ideas?
No, James is kind of cool with that. He's just like, do whatever you want, go for it. I think I have a theme. I think all the stories are going to be centered around myths about the end of the world. Like the first one was centered around the Mayan myth that the world was going to end in 2012, according to the Mayan calendar. The second one was on the deluge myth, which is common to Indian and sort of Greco-Roman cultures, which thinks the world is going to end in a flood. And so I don't know what the next one will be. Maybe Armageddon, maybe fire. We'll see.
We've got Val watching with us. She says she loves Savage Shores. Such a unique story. Will there be any more stories to come with Savage Shores?
I know there are some plans to do an edition, which will feature some extra stories. But I also feel like if you really loved Savage Shores, like part of my intent behind creating that was to talk about India's colonization and what we lost in that time. And so it doesn't quite feel right for me to go back to that and go like, and now the continued adventures, because I feel like it's said what it has to say, and to say anything more would weaken what it has already said. So I'm sure there will be content around the stories. Maybe we'll look into the lives of some of the characters that we saw along the way. But that story in itself, I think my intention is to just keep it the way it is.
Perfect. A reminder, you are watching us on The Experience, which is a fully interactive platform. So do add, just like Val did, if you have any questions for Ram, please do type them in. We'd love to have them answered for you, because I know we've got burning questions in your heart. All right, so I still somehow don't have a copy of Black Mamba, and I desperately want one. If someone wanted to have a copy of Black Mamba, how in the world do they find it?
Well, they need to make sure I'm not incredibly lazy, which is why you don't have copies of Black Mamba. I've got boxes of the thing sat here, and every Wednesday I'm like, I gotta send it out, and then by the time Thursday comes around, I'm like, oh, I'm doing so much. No, I gotta send you those boxes. We'll talk after the show, but if people want to pick them up individually, they ship out of the UK through my sort of art/publishing outlet. There's a website called iforlondonprints.com. That's I as in EYE for londonprints.com.
Oh, this is a great question. So Val's asked a good one. It's like she did some research or something. Please advise, what was the big reason for the switch from chemical engineering to comics industry, and what did your parents say?
Well, I'd been writing since I was a kid. Really, I'd been writing since I was 13, and so it was the chemical engineering that in my head was the big switch, and that was because my parents wanted me to be an engineer, which is very sort of typical Orthodox Indian family. You have to be an engineer, a doctor, and if you can't be either of those things, then you're allowed to be a lawyer, I suppose. But no, I wanted to write, and I think I was pretty decent. I was pretty good at chemical engineering as well. It's just I took no joy from it. So 2013, 2012, somewhere around there, I quit. And I decided to start writing. I had a few things published here and there. And, 2014, I moved to the UK to study creative writing. 2016, I self-published Black Mamba, and the rest is comics history. My parents said, "Are you crazy?" when they first heard that I wanted to do this. My dad was convinced I was going to come back and say, "Oh, Dad, get me a job again, please." But I didn't. And I think by the time I was writing, Batman stories at DC, even my dad couldn't sort of dismiss the fact that, okay, maybe he's got a job.
He's doing okay. Yeah, we've just kind of come to that crossroads in our lives with our children, because our youngest just came to us. He's a senior in high school, and he told us he wants to be a welder.
Right.
It's like there's no one in the family that's even mentioned such a thing. Okay, follow that dream.
Something about those welding shields, face shields. They look really cool.
Honestly, I think probably what happened is he heard either me talking about welders and that they make really good money, or someone else.
Yeah, and there's like I didn't know this. I only know this because I did chemical engineering. But there's like levels of welders. There's the guy who welds your regular home construction stuff. But then there's also the welders who work on like power plant equipment, and those guys, like, you have to wait for days before one of them is available, and they'll come look at your vessel if they have time.
That's right. You don't want those kinds of things to fail, those welds, so you can pay
No,
extra.
and they have to be certified and all kinds of complex stuff.
Mhm.
This is a really weird tangent for a comic book chat, but cool.
It totally is. So are you in a frame of mind or the ability to go, and have you started to travel and do appearances again at conventions or elsewhere?
Well, I'll probably do international stuff once I've been vaccinated, which I think I'm still waiting. I'm on the next tier of vaccinations here in the UK. Local UK stuff, I'm less iffy about. So I am doing Thought Bubble by end of this year. And that's because over half of the UK population has already been vaccinated. So I imagine by the time we're in November, I'll either be really unlucky or things should be fine.
I heard that the UK is like, other than Israel, I think, who's got a higher percentage of vaccinations. I think the UK is next in line for being the most successful at doing the most. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean they've been quite organized about it. It'd be helpful if they were less wishy-washy about their messaging, but otherwise, it's fine. It's good.
So what are you most excited about that's coming out next that you've worked on?
Well, next week, issue 1 of Many Deaths of Layla Starr is out from Boom.
Is it already pre-sold out? I've heard rumors that it's pre-sold out. Is that true?
Yeah, it pre-sold out, and then they went to a second print. And so I don't know anything beyond that. They just emailed me and they said, like, congratulations, gentlemen, your issue 1 has sold out and we're going to second print. So that's always good to hear, and I appreciate that. So thank you to everyone who's picking up a copy. I know there are people who are picking up the really rare sort of incentive variants that Boom has been doing as well, and we've got some really pretty ones from Jeff DeCal and David Mack and Anand R.K. and Mike Del Mundo. All these very beautiful, pretty covers that Boom keeps surprising me with. Like, none of these, like, I'm not involved in the process, so every once in a while I just get an email from Eric Harburn at Boom, go like, hey, check this cover out. I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. But yeah, so I'm very excited about that one. It's a kind of story that I've wanted to do for a while. It's a little bit of Sandman, it's a little bit of Day Tripper, it's a whole lot of Graffiti's Wall, all those kind of influences combined to tell you a story about life and death in Mumbai. So check it out.
So does this one have any particular inspiration?
There's a whole tradition of like old Indian stories about the god of death coming down to earth. There's so many varieties of them, and so I wanted to do one, but then I asked myself, like, hasn't Gaiman already done that? Didn't he already do death on Earth as this like cool goth girl, if you will? And I thought to myself, but that's Indian ideas of death are very different from those ideas of death. And I felt like death was a very culturally unique thing to a lot of places. So I said, okay, let me explore, instead of like a goth woman, what's it like to be a 6-armed warrior goddess who has been fired from her job and sent down to the city of Mumbai to live amongst mortals. So we'll see how crazy it gets.
I'm sure it'll be very crazy. Oh goodness.
Yeah, and then I've got more work coming up from Marvel as well. Carnage. I have a short story in their Carnage anthology, and then a bunch of unannounced stuff. Radio Apocalypse from Vault got postponed, so it will be out in October. It was supposed to be out this month, but it will be out in October.
Else are
So how far out are you booked?
I can't do anything until 2023.
I thought so.
It's a bit crazy.
I
But
told
also,
you.
like, I mean, things are changing. Also, like, I've got personal stuff coming up that I just can't maintain. Kind of doing 4 or 3 monthly books every month, and it's probably not good for the brain. I need some time to just like check out and go stare at the sky or something. So, yeah, things will get restructured, but in general, like, I'm very full up on work.
Yeah. So what do you do to go chill?
I play my guitar, and very rarely I will play a video game or two. I will watch sports. I will read books, and that's about all I have time for, apart from writing. So,
What video game do you like?
well, currently I'm playing this game called Path of Exile, which is a Diablo-esque but better designed game, in my opinion. Yeah.
Is it MMO or first person?
No, not really. No, it's a I don't know what they're called. Third person 3D view. I don't know. It's very Diablo-like for those who know those terms.
Everyone else does. I'm like the most ungamed person. If it's not Candy Crush, I probably don't know anything about it.
Oh yeah, I had to like not. I had to unload all of the games from my phone, because that would just be a case of like me sat in bed at 2 a.m. in the morning, like playing on the phone. Not good. I need my sleep.
All right. Well, we're in our last minute or so. Tell everybody where they can reach you if they wanted to follow you and to find out all the new things you're working on next.
I've got a website called rom-v.com that I promise I will update at some point. But in the meantime, you can find me on Twitter at the right Rom, as opposed to the wrong one. I'm also on Instagram under Rom V Writes, and those are the 2 places where I'm fairly active.
Oh, I'm so excited. So I have been a big fan for a long time, and I love seeing all the successes that you've had. You've deserved it, all the hard work for them.
Thank you so much. I do mention this to everyone. Jen was the first one to come sit next to me at a convention and say, like, one day you're gonna be a name. And I didn't believe her at all until like 2 years later. I was like, okay, Jen, you were right.
I can see brilliance. There's brilliance there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ron, for joining me. I appreciate it very much. We'll have you back, after 2023, I guess, whenever you're more free time.
I mean, I've got free time. I don't ask me to write comics.
I was trying to see.
All right, brother. Thanks so much for joining us late into the night.
Take it easy. Bye.
Today's comics market is ripe with new titles by creators who are determined to get their books into your hands. My name is Henri Compen. For the last decade, I've been making and selling my own creator-owned comics and dealing as a collector in live sales. My signature series, Yi Sun Shin, is the book that cannot be defeated in battle and has over 250,000 copies in print. Now I'm taking comics to the next level and laying the groundwork for my fellow creators to get their voices heard so they can connect directly with you. This is your chance to engage live with top comic book talent and get your comics signed without having to wait in long lines or pay any fees. But remember, we only have a limited amount of their books in stock, so always remember to call it as you see it.
everybody. I'm Miss Jen, and you are watching Shop Talk on the Experience. That was an amazing interview with Ron B. And it's kind of crazy because both my guests today are in the UK, which means scheduling is very interesting because they're on a totally different time schedule than we are in. A reminder to please make sure to add the many lives of Layla Starr to your pulls, because it is clearly sold out at distribution already. So if you get with your local comic shop this week, you have a hope of having it in your pull box for next week. There's lots of really gorgeous covers, just as he said. Speaking of things that are coming out, this week we have a new trade paperback for a series that's been super successful from Image Comics, which is this beautiful thing, Homesick Pilots. It's been a wild ride. I know what you're thinking. You think you know what this book's about, but you probably don't. Kyle, if you want to come on and chat with me, you can. Otherwise, I'll just wax poetically. Hey, brother.
Let me actually turn my microphone on. I'm like all out of sorts.
What?
Bring me on time for me to help you set up. For me, I'm going to cop to time zones are hard. Especially when one of those people is at +0 GMT, which makes it even harder because it's like, okay, now what's GMT? So we thought we were an hour from now, right now, because I'm not good at time zones. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave and let Jen talk to Dan Waters.
Dan, hello.
Hey, Jen, how's it going?
Welcome. I'm so glad to have you on. Sorry about time zones, man. But they're really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, they change all the time between the UK and US.
Believe it or not, we just had Ron V on.
Oh, yeah?
Same time zone.
Yep.
All right. So you've worked on a lot of different amazing properties, like the Sandman universe, things like Lucifer. Oh my gosh. Some things that I love, like Coffin Bound, which I didn't get to finish, which makes me crazy. I'm going to go and get that trade paperback after this. It reminded me when I was doing the reads, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't get to finish to find out how in the world she resolved that.
Yeah, we that whole second book came out right in lockdown and right in the mess of the last year. So that was a lot of fun.
Did you guys see it in the numbers that people did kind of get distracted and they probably didn't finish that series, but maybe just picked up the trade at the end?
Yeah, like the second trade did pretty well. I think just the fact that people weren't in. I mean, like over here, the stores were shut for so long, and people weren't able to just sort of like go and pick up sort of weekly comics. And I think it also just meant that stuff wasn't being seen on the shelves. Because no one was sort of like impulse buying anything. So like the trade numbers were definitely sort of nicer than the single issues for the second volume.
Oh yeah. And then currently you're right in the middle of the picture of everything else with Vault.
Yes. And the picture of everything else and Homesick Pilots I have running at the moment.
What's so funny is that I normally can tell you everything about every book that Vault does, but that's the one that Hannah steals from me. We do a review show on Tuesdays. And so what happens usually is they're all in the back room unboxing all the comics, and then I'm up front until it's right before time I need to go and do review. So I'll go in the back and I'll start picking my books out. But sure enough, Hannah will already have a pile with all the stuff she wants already. If I really wanted them, I'd have to like Greco-Roman wrestle her for them. So in this case, she wins on that one.
Well, I hope she's enjoying it.
Yeah, and I think she's also won on this one, but I also read it too. Every once in a while, we both read because we are not willing to, back down from I'm reading this for review. But Homesick Pilots is the thing about it is that I love so much the smart way it's told.
Thank you.
It's from. I love the way it transitions into those black pages in which is just her thought process.
Yeah, that was definitely a sort of way to have our cake and eat it a bit, or at least on my front, just with having some narration and getting to be a little bit more prosaic and wordy the way I quite like to be, which works in a certain way if you're doing a book like Lucifer or Coffin Bound, where everyone can be sort of very bit sort of arch and have sort of monologues and stuff. And with Homesick Pilots, we definitely wanted a sort of more of a manga influenced feel, and so sort of covering every page in words didn't seem quite right. But then to have her in a monologue and do it in a way that was a little bit different felt like quite a cool way to find a middle ground with that.
And also, the story is so multifaceted. It's not just a horror story. It's also a mystery and like a battle of the bands almost.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the horror sort of element came from wanting to heighten I mean, the horror and the sort of like the weirder stuff that's happening in that book was that from wanting to sort of heighten the more real side of being a teenager, like the real horrors of being a teenager, and in a scene like that, like in the sort of punk scene, like I really wanted to dig into talking about that because it's something that I grew up with, and that's always been like very important to me.
So have you ever experienced a haunted house? Were you inspired by a haunted house experience?
No, I think it was more that I was inspired by weird squat shows that I went to as a teenager, and the sort of places like I went to like punk shows in abandoned car garages and all sorts of like strange places, and so the idea of sort of combining that with a haunted house narrative seemed pretty fun.
Is it regular for people, like when I first started reading the part where they're in the bowling alley, I just thought that they had made an arrangement to use the bowling alley, but it's clear that that's not the way it went down. Is it regular for them to like crash/break into places and have?
I mean, it's usually places that are shut down. And I mean, here in the UK, it used to happen. It used to happen a lot more. To be honest, they changed the laws to make it a lot harder. But it used to be kind of like if you could access a place and you had a place. But we used to get into sort of crazy situations like that as well. Like the police aren't allowed, or at least then they weren't allowed to just like break in. But if they could get access, if they could like access an open door, then they could kick you all out. So it would turn into a thing where people were waiting to go into the show, but the cops were there. So the cops would sort of chase people around the side of the building, and there'd be like another door, and everyone would get like ushered in, and the door would get shut, and then they'd have to like run around and turn into this whole cat and mouse thing of like getting into and out of the show without letting the cops get close to you. I feel like I'm incriminating myself now.
I'm sure that the statute of limitations or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure right now the cops are just like going, "Oh, kids."
These are all things I did allegedly.
Yes. So essentially, Homesick Pilots is the name of the band, which, usually when you see a title of a book, you think, okay, well, that's going to inform me about what it's about. So is this about, astronauts? No. Is it about fighter pilots? No. It's not about any of those things. It's basically about a band who has like a weird back history. Like the female singer's got some kind of like rumor that's circulating about her.
Yeah.
And they have a history of wanting to go and find new and interesting places to have, their band appear, which they have like we were talking about the bowling alley before.
Yeah.
And then they come up with this crazy idea that it would be fun to do it in a haunted house.
Well, that's like the title. I think the title makes more sense the more you get into the book. The idea that the Homesick Pilots as a band, the reason they sort of found each other is that they're all orphaned. So there's this sort of homesick element in there, and that they find their place like more in the punk scene. So like it was in like Casper and I were throwing back and forth names, and we knew that we wanted the name of the book to be the name of the band. So it was like an experience I've also had in real life many times. Is trying to name a band is the most like excruciating, tooth pulling like situation. So doing it. So trying to come up with a name for the book was the same. We were trying to come up with a name of the band for the band that felt just right for these kids. And Casper. It was Casper who said time sick pilot. So then we just got really stuck on that because there's also the pilot element also comes in the fact that I don't think it sort of spoils anything because we show it right at the beginning of the book and then sort of show how we got there is that that the house gets up and walks with Amy inside it, the singer of the band. So she's essentially piloting. So she's literally piloting a haunted house. And I guess the way we came to that idea of having a house get up and walk and having the whole thing being about it being somewhere that they wanted to play a show, it came from watching a couple of haunted house things recently, sort of watching and reading some things that just, to me, I love haunted house narratives and I love ghost stories. Like those are probably my favorite kind of very single specific genre is ghost stories. And I just read too many things recently that were just a little bit too neat, and it was always about like, oh, you overcome your trauma, the one thing that sort of makes your life difficult, and you overcome it, and then everything's fine, and the ghost goes away. And I don't think that's how it works, and I think that lets the metaphor of the ghost kind of get away from you because life is way messier than that, and trauma is way messier than that, and it's something that you just have to. You can either learn to absorb it into yourself, or you can't. But it's not going to go away. You're not going to just get rid of it, and everything's going to be hunky dory from there on. So, the idea of the house being something that was somewhere where they were going to play a show, so it was somewhere that was related to the sort of scene as far as they're concerned, and as far as Amy's concerned, it's something that's important to her on that side. And it's also something that she's not going to get rid of. It's now she's a part of it. It's a part of her, and it just felt like a different kind of way of telling that ghost story.
So as we make it past the first issue, because that's as far as I've gotten to go so far, does that conflict with the other band? Does that continue? Where does the band all meet their demise?
That would be that's definitely spoiler territory.
I'm still gonna read it for sure. So don't tell me.
And as far as we sort of killed them all off in the first issue, but it's a ghost story. So there are avenues there for further conflict between the bands. But that was definitely a thing that was important to me about Home Surprise, was to keep that element in there, even as stuff got weirder and stranger. The band stuff is always still there. And the sort of connection to the music scene.
All right, so I don't know how much you like ask for the artist for a page layout, but there's a page in the book, or a double spread page in the first book, that makes me crazy, and I'm sure you know which one it is. They're climbing up the side of the house, and then it's just like the skill level is so high, and the whole there's clearly no way for you to know really which way to read this thing, but it's so clear to the reader which way you're supposed to read this thing, where you follow it all the way across the third story and then go down the second story and then come back across. It's like, obviously that's a high skill in writing, but did you tell the artist how that layout was going to be? Did you imagine that in your brain?
I mean, I sort of, no problem. I think I did it in literally in MS Paint or something like that, where I just laid out the boxes with arrows. But I love doing stuff like that with Casper. Like Casper and I did our first book together, which was Limbo, back in 2015 at Image, and we did something similar to that in the second issue of that. And so this is the first time we've worked together on something long form since then. So I really wanted to go back and I think we both just really wanted to go back and do that kind of stuff again and just have fun with it. Casper's storytelling is second to none. So I know I can throw something at him like that and he'll make me look smart.
Was there anything that you wrote into this whole storyline that you thought, I know it needs to happen on the page, but I have no idea how to make that happen, that Casper just figured it out?
It's a funny one, because with Casper, because we did our first book together, we work. I don't really work with Casper the way I work with most people. Like in my career, Casper and I will talk on the phone for like hours and plan out what's going to sort of happen before I sit down and write a script. So generally speaking, Casper has a pretty, like we both have a pretty solid idea going in before I then go and put in structure and dialogue and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we it's a very, very collaborative sort of book.
Well, it's wonderful. And just as a reminder to everyone that's watching, this is a completely interactive interview show. So if you have questions, you should totally put them in the chat. Imagine you're at Comic-Con and the mic is open, so you can go and ask at any time you like. So I'm going to keep on asking questions, but you can type them in anytime that you like to. And also, this is a reminder, definitely Homesick Pilots trade paperback. You should talk to your local comic shop about adding it to your pulls so you don't miss it. Dan, are there any other projects that are upcoming very soon that you want to point people to?
What have I got? I'm trying to remember what's announced. What have I got upcoming? I've got. Sorry, it's quite late here now as well. So
No, I'm so sorry.
Get to that point. I mean, the picture, everything else is still running. We've got issue 3 that's just come out. I've got Infinite Frontier Secret Files is the next thing I have coming out through DC. So Josh Williamson put me in for that because he's doing the Infinite Frontier main miniseries, and we are doing the Secret Files. So I'm doing a story with Psycho Pirate, which is a very cool character to get to do. He's
Josh, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay.
one of those characters who's been in the weirdest sort of things, like Grant Morrison's Animal Man and Crisis. I'm trying to remember which Crisis is which Crisis now. Crisis on Infinite Earths. So we're doing a story with him, which hopefully is really quite scary for a DC mainline book. And doing a story with Jaden Obsidian, Alan Scott's the original Green Lantern children, which is a cool thing to be picking up because they've just had Alan Scott come out to his children, so we're doing a story right in the wake of that. Two very cool and very underutilized characters in my opinion.
So you've kind of been doing just kind of like one section of the universe for DC. Are there any mainline DC characters you would love to work on?
Yeah, I think I'm like okay to say like there's definitely more stuff I am working on. I have stuff which I imagine won't be announced. It won't be too long before it's announced. I'm doing a book there that I'm very excited about.
Okay, sounds good.
There's a lot of stuff I'd like to do. I mean, I just did the last sort of year I got to do Batman. I did a Secret Files Batman story. I did a Superman Red and Blue story. I did Superman Wonder Woman for Future State. So sort of getting to do those big characters is really interesting because they just carry so much weight and there's so much you can sort of leave unsaid with them, and just the weight of the history of the character sort of brings it, especially something like Superman. So I really enjoy doing all that kind of stuff.
So when you are handed something like that, something so important like those characters that have so much history, does the studio intend for you to already have a good history base for that character, or do they hand off a bunch of information to you that they say this is the things about this character that you can't move, and these are the things that are open?
I don't know. I think when you're doing sort of shorter things, the expectation is you're just going to try and dig in and tell a good story, which means you're probably not going to be trying to change the fundamentals of the character. I think just having an understanding of who they are and how they sort of interact with their world is pretty important. Like if you start messing with that too much, then if that's, to be honest, that's just shoddy character work in my opinion. So it's I think that's far more important. I mean, I don't think the sort of I think it depends on the office and depends on who's sort of what the priority is for the book. I think Superman Red and Blue, like they were quite easy for us to do whatever we wanted as long as it was a Superman story. But I think it being a Superman story means it has to do certain specific things. It has to be about, if you just sort of try to make it into the most miserable, maudlin thing that had ever been written, I just don't like that. Wouldn't really be a Superman story. Just be a story with Superman in it.
Just as a reader of comic books, I've always read those kinds of things and thought to myself, I don't know how any writer could possibly know enough to know that they're not writing a story that's already been done when you have a character that has such a long life, like Batman, like Superman, like Captain America. It's like it's a mystical thing to me as a reader, like how that doesn't happen where someone doesn't come up to you later and like, so-and-so did this in 1978.
I mean, maybe sometimes it does. I mean, I know people like to obsess a bit over, especially like having done Lucifer, people definitely like to obsess a bit over the sort of power levels and stuff like that. And but as a writer, that like, and I might be sort of like outing myself in certain ways, but as a writer, that's fundamentally not that interesting to me. It doesn't really matter who can beat who up. It only sort of matters for the context of the story you're telling right now. Okay. And yes, you don't want things fluctuating so much that they don't make sense, and that people feel betrayed between stories, because you're giving yourself sort of easy outs by going, oh yeah, but this person can just do this, and then they're fine, and they can just spin around the sun and set time back or whatever. But as long as the sort of logic feels intact within the story you're telling, then I think anything kind of goes. And it doesn't really matter if someone's done a similar story before, if someone's tried to take the character to similar places. If you do it in a way which reaches people and tugs on the heartstrings, or if that's what you're trying to do, or makes people, as long as it makes people feel something, then I think it's a successful story. And it doesn't. The other stuff can fall by the wayside a little bit. I think that's the most important bit, is just making the story really good, and making people feel it.
So are you a person that really misses the hustle and bustle of going to conventions, or have you really enjoyed kind of being a homebody this last year?
I think a bit of both. I think it's all been. I mean, it's definitely gotten long. I am quite a solitary person, and I like the quiet and having time to think and space to think. But I think being separated from people altogether has been really tough, especially at this point, and not being able to. Those. I would normally make it over to the States at least once a year, either for New York or San Diego, and not being able to do that at all, and not being able to go to like Thought Bubble, which is big over here, and that's normally when I get to see everyone, like right before the end of the year, and it's just a sort of a bit of a comic Christmas party in the UK, right at the end of the year, and everyone's sort of wrapping stuff up and a little bit more relaxed and things, and it's definitely started to suck that none of that's happening.
I hear you. All right, Dan, for anybody that is interested in following you on social media, where's the right places for that?
On both Twitter and Instagram, I am at Dan PG Waters. I'm definitely on Twitter more than Instagram. Twitter's the easiest place to find me.
Mm-hmm. Well, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us so late into the night.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Evening.
Nice to see you as well.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Experience. We'll have you back.
Bye.